Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Maudie Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top story tonight on Gravitas, we focus on a big question. Can India take Sindh as separatists batter the Pakistan army? We tell you all about the Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's latest remarks on the province and the bigger picture. That's coming up in just a bit. You don't want to miss that. Also on the show for you tonight, is Ukraine being pushed towards a land for peace deal? What would that mean for the country? Is this the huge cost of peace for Kiev? We look at what's happening behind the scenes. What are the implications of Japan placing missiles 110 kilometers from Taiwan? Where are things headed? All this and more coming up. Our top story tonight on Gravitas. We are asking the question, can India take Sindh as separatists continue to batter the Pakistan army? Because the Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's latest remarks regarding the province have likely triggered both strategic and psychological unease across Pakistan's power corridors, and also brought back the spotlight on Sindh's deep historical and cultural ties with India. Comments that come at a time when Pakistan's own security structure is being battered by separatist violence across multiple provinces. At an event of the Sindhi community in New Delhi, the Defence Minister said that Sindh may be separated politically, but its civilizational bond with India never broke. He pointed out that the Sindhi Hindus, including leaders like former Deputy Prime Minister Lal Krishna Advani, had emotionally rejected the partition line that placed Sindh inside Pakistan. Rajnath Singh highlighted Advani's own writing, where he noted that both Hindus and many Muslims traditionally viewed the Indus River as sacred. The Defence Minister said this shared reverence reflects a cultural unity that political borders could not erase. And he then delivered the remark that is perhaps echoing across Islamabad and Rawalpindi. Listen to this.
आज सिंध की भूमि, मेरे बहनों भाइयों, यह भारत का हिस्सा भले ही न हो, लेकिन सभ्यतागत रूप से सिंध हमेशा भारत का हिस्सा रहेगा। और जहां तक जमीन की बात है, तो बॉर्डर्स तो बदल सकते हैं, क्या पता कल को सिंध भारत में फिर से वापस आ जाए।
You heard those words. Observers interpret those comments as deliberate signaling aimed at Pakistan's establishment, knowing the clip would likely go viral within hours, not just in Islamabad, but across Pakistan. The message, they say, is absolutely clear. India is asserting that it has not forgotten Pakistan's history or geography, while making it clear that it is India that decides the terms of the narrative, all without firing a shot. New Delhi made the comments, but observers say Karachi and Rawalpindi are dealing with the consequences. And the Indian military has also made it clear that it remains ready for any kind of conflict on the sidelines of an Indian army exercise in Uttarakhand. Lieutenant General Manoj Kumar Katiyar said that India is prepared for all types of warfare. Listen to this.
Until we capture land, Pakistan will not believe that we have won. All domains are important. We are preparing on all domains for a battle.
Pakistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs reacted to Rajnath Singh's comments and accused India of expansionism. But this comes at a time when Pakistan's internal security is under relentless assault. In Peshawar, suicide attackers stormed the headquarters of the Federal Constabulary earlier today itself, blew themselves up inside the compound. At least 3 personnel died, 5 were injured. Pakistan's Interior Minister condemned the attack, while Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Chief Minister said such violence would not break morale. Security officials confirmed that 3 of the attackers were neutralized. Pakistan's media is reporting that Tehreek-e-Taliban, Pakistan's faction, claimed responsibility for the attack. This incident has brought to focus a rather troubling pattern. In September, 6 Pakistani soldiers were killed in an attack in Bannu district. In October, a suicide bomber rammed an explosives-laden vehicle in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, while just 2 weeks ago, 2 more suicide strikes hit the cadet college in South Waziristan. And while the military is stretched thin in the northwest, separatist sentiment remaining in focus in the southwest. In May, Baloch nationalist leaders publicly declared independence, remember, sparking widespread sharing of an independent Balochistan map across social media, a map that often reappears online whenever instability surges there. In fact, amid the surge of violent incidents this month, citing the worsening law and order situation, authorities in Balochistan suspended mobile internet service in all 36 districts for 7 days last week. Tonight, as Pakistan faces insurgency and the escalating attacks, India's Defence Minister's comments once again reminding the world of Sindh's historical and cultural roots in India. All right, on some breaking news coming in right this minute. The Chinese President Xi Jinping and the US President Donald Trump have held a phone conversation. And here's what is emerging at this point. As per the information that's been released by Beijing State News Agency, the 2 leaders discussed bilateral cooperation as well as the issue of Taiwan during that call. In fact, Xi Jinping told Donald Trump that the 2 sides should maintain momentum in ties after the 2 leaders met last month in South Korea and stressed that Taiwan's return to China is an important part of the post-war international order. This is what's coming in now as a result of that telephonic conversation that's taken place between the 2 leaders. Going straight across now to our correspondent Susan Teherani, who's been monitoring those developments. Tell us more about what transpired. Also, very interesting timing of that conversation there.
Very interesting timing indeed. After Xinhua made that report that China and the United States held that conversation, White House officials are now confirming that that conversation took place this morning. Xi's phone call with President Trump really is one of 2 important moves that he made in the last 24 to 48 hours. On the one hand, he made China's position regarding Taiwan very clear, despite the fact that they have, quote unquote, stable relationships, as Xi mentioned. But also, it really set out a hardline reaction to Japan, which recently said that they would engage if China decides to invade Taiwan. Of course, China believes that Taiwan ultimately is part of its territory. But for Japan at this point, especially after this phone call with President Trump, is in a peculiar situation. If there's a softening of stance on the one hand from Japan now after these threats by China and this conversation with President Trump, then the Chinese leader, the new Chinese leader, may face internal backlash. If it continues to have a hardline stance, then it risks more tensions with China and possibly some economic repercussions as well. And again, I want to focus that while Xi, in this phone call, according to a readout from the Chinese side, we're still waiting to see what the Americans said that relationship between the two sides is stable. He wanted to make very clear to the United States that whether you or your allies take a more peculiar stance against Taiwan, then the Chinese government will ultimately react. So very interesting indeed. We also have heard from White House officials, although not officially, that the two sides also talked about the war in Ukraine, and President Xi welcomed any kind of settlement, peace settlement brokered by the United States.
All right, we'll leave it there for the moment, Susan, but of course, keeping a close eye on those developments as and when further updates trickle in. And we're shifting focus for now. Japan is accelerating its military plans near Taiwan, and China is furious, to say the least. During a high-profile visit to a base on the island of Yonaguni, just 110 kilometers from Taiwan, Japan's defense minister announced that Japan will press ahead with plans to deploy medium-range surface-to-air missiles to the island, extending Japan's air defense reach 48 kilometers. Koizumi says the deployment is not about escalating ties or escalating tensions, beg your pardon, but preventing an attack. Listen to this.
The medium-range surface-to-air guided missile unit planned for deployment at Camp Yonaguni is a force dedicated to protect the island's security. We believe its deployment will reduce the very possibility of armed attacks against our nation and do not consider the argument that it will heighten regional tensions to be accurate. We are steadily advancing preparations for deployment and intend to provide clear information to the local community once a specific deployment timeline becomes foreseeable.
Now, this plan to station the medium-range surface-to-air missiles on Yonaguni comes as part of a broader military build-up on its southern island chain. And the moves also reflecting Tokyo's concerns about China's growing military power and the potential for a clash over Taiwan. In fact, Koizumi, who took over as defense minister last month itself, said that the ministry was still working on the plan and would share details with the local government and the people of Yonaguni when the details are finalized. Before arriving there, the minister visited bases on the islands of Ishigaki and Miyako. The Ishigaki base is equipped with anti-ship missiles, while Miyako is a hub for air surveillance and other military facilities, including ammunition storage. Japan and the United States also have major bases on the larger island of Okinawa, further to the east. Yonaguni, which is a popular tourist retreat, including for scuba divers, has itself become a frontline outpost. It houses a surveillance radar, and since 2024, an electronic warfare unit capable of jamming enemy communications and guidance systems. In fact, just weeks ago, the US military tested logistics routes to move supplies from Okinawa to Yonaguni. In a dry run for setting up a forward operating base in a crisis, in a meeting with the mayor of Yonaguni, Koizumi said Japan has to build up its deterrence by increasing its own capabilities and deepening ties with the US military. Yonaguni is the endpoint of the Ryukyu island chain that stretches several hundred miles from the Japanese mainland. And Tokyo says the move is meant to prevent war, but China calls it a provocation.
Japan's deployment of offensive weapons on the southwestern islands adjacent to Taiwan is a deliberate attempt to create regional tension and provoke military confrontation. Coupled with Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's erroneous remarks on Taiwan, this trend is extremely dangerous and warrants high vigilance from neighboring countries and the international community.
Remember, China maintains that Taiwan is its national territory and has vowed to unify with the mainland by force if necessary. And when Beijing feels provoked, its response can be severe. In 2022, when China responded to a visit to Taiwan by the then US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi by launching major military drills around the island, ballistic missiles landed just south of Yonaguni, showing just how close the island really is to any conflict for control of Taiwan. And in recent weeks, Tokyo's fear of being dragged into such a conflict have intensified after remarks by the Prime Minister, who suggested Japan could join other militaries if China attacked Taiwan. China retaliated economically and demanded a retraction. Japan has dismissed Beijing's claim that its position has shifted as entirely baseless. But for financial markets, the war of words has consequences. The standoff is feeding volatility in Japanese equities as well as the yen. The Japanese markets are already under pressure from high government spending and a tech sector sell-off. With missile plans now moving forward and China also warning of confrontation, Yonaguni has become the latest flashpoint in the region. Shifting focus now to Ukraine after nearly 4 years of that war and repeated promises from the West that it will stand by Ukraine no matter what, Kiev is being pushed towards a land for peace deal by the very same Western powers that vowed unconditional support. In fact, talks between the US and Ukraine in Geneva have been called constructive, but the pressure is unmistakable. Washington has tabled a 28-point proposal that demands Ukraine surrender Crimea as well as the region of Donetsk and Luhansk and permanently abandon its NATO ambitions. What does it get in exchange? Peace and access to US funding to rebuild a shattered country. In fact, the US says this is the fastest route to ending the war. For Ukraine, this could be the biggest decision in its modern history, to say the least. It is one of its stated red lines. Remember, Kiev has been against ceding territory. But with America and Europe at crossroads over the war and Russia gaining more and more land from Ukraine day by day, could Kiev have no other option but to accept such a deal? In fact, US and Ukrainian delegations concluded their first round of talks over the US 28-point peace plan in Geneva on Sunday. Both sides described the discussions as constructive while signaling that delicate issues remain unresolved. The meeting was held at the residence of the US mission to the United Nations in Geneva. And in a joint statement released by the White House, the two sides said they had updated and refined a draft agreement and would continue consultations in the coming days while maintaining close communication with European partners. After the talks, the US Secretary of State had an optimistic tone.
But I can tell you, I guess, that I feel very optimistic that we can get something done here because we made a tremendous amount of progress today. Oh, it was very positive. I'm telling you, today was the most productive day we have had. Well,
even Zelensky later stated in a video posted on social media that there were signs the US delegation was listening to Ukraine's concerns. He emphasized that any measures aimed at ending the conflict must be realistic and capable of ensuring lasting security.
It is important to ensure that the steps to end the war are effective and that everything is functional. Ukraine has never wanted war. We will never be an obstacle to peace. Diplomacy is activated, and this is good, very good. We expect that the result will be the right steps.
Meanwhile, discussions are underway regarding a potential visit by Zelensky to the US as soon as this week. According to Reuters, the goal would reportedly be for the two presidents to directly address the most sensitive elements of the plan, including territorial matters. No date has been confirmed for the possible trip as of now, reportedly. Remember, we've been telling you Trump's 28-point peace plan includes concessions of large amounts of Ukrainian land to Russia and a cap on the size of Ukraine's military as well. Along with giving up territory, the size of the Ukrainian army will be limited to 600,000 personnel. Ukraine will commit to not joining NATO and will enshrine that in its constitution. Also, NATO will never admit Ukraine as a member, and NATO will not station troops in Ukraine. As for Russia, the plan calls for Russia to agree to $100 billion of its frozen assets to be invested in US-led efforts to rebuild Ukraine. Across the Atlantic, EU leaders also discussed the US proposal to end the war on the sidelines of the summit with the African leaders in Angola. It followed Sunday's talks in Geneva between the US and Ukraine. The US plan had sparked alarm in Kiev and across European capitals, in fact. The US plan, which was drafted without input from Ukraine's European allies last week, spooked Europe as it provided Moscow to gain even more territory than it occupies, with many in Kiev and the EU seeing it as effective capitulation to Moscow. No information has been released about what was discussed during the meeting in Angola today, but images from Italy's Premier Giorgia Meloni's office showing the European Commission President, European Council President and the Spanish Prime Minister and the German Chancellor among those attending that meeting. Meanwhile, the longer the diplomatic efforts take, the more land Ukraine loses on the ground to Russia. In Kharkiv, the death toll rose on Monday after a massive Russian drone attack. Russian forces launched strike drones at residential areas of the region, resulting in the deaths of at least 4 people. Thirteen others also injured during the overnight attack, which damaged residential buildings and educational facility as well as power lines. Ukraine's Air Force says Russia fired a barrage of 162 strikes and decoy drones over the country last night. This attack on the frontline region of Kharkiv came after Russia claimed to have captured 3 more Ukrainian settlements on Sunday. The Russian Defence Ministry has said that it took control of Petrovskoy in Donetsk region and Tikhoy and Otrelnoy in the Dnipropetrovsk region. In Pokrovsk, the Russian assault groups of the 2nd Army continue to strike the besieged Ukrainian forces in the Central District, the Miners District and the Western Industrial Area. As is evident, the war is showing no signs of slowing down, so the question is no longer simply how the war ends, but on whose terms really. Is Ukraine being given a choice, or is it an ultimatum? And if land is traded for peace, can peace truly follow? New details have emerged about the CIA's covert operations against A.Q. Khan. Former CIA officer James Lawler dubbed Khan as the merchant of death and mentioned that confrontation with then Pakistani leader Pervez Musharraf about Khan's role in nuclear trafficking nearly blew up US-Pakistan relations. In an interview to ANI, Lawler revealed how the US intelligence community uncovered Khan's global network supplying nuclear technology to countries like Libya, Iran and North Korea. In fact, he described the high-risk operations to sabotage illegal nuclear programs was carried out using fake front companies and compromised equipment and halt the spread of sensitive technology. He also revealed that certain Pakistani generals and leaders were on Khan's payroll, but he also stressed that individual complicity did not equate official state policy.
We did not imagine was that instead of domestic needs for certain high technologies, he was going to turn around and become an outward proliferator, meaning he was going to supply nuclear technology to other countries. And this was without Pakistan's leadership's blessings. We found that out later. This is outward proliferation to other countries. In fact, it turned out to be a whole host of countries, and I nicknamed Dr. Khan the Merchant of Death.
And according to him, when CIA Director George Tenet warned Pakistani leader Pervez Musharraf that Ayub Khan was betraying Pakistan's nuclear secrets to Libyans and maybe others, Musharraf reacted explosively before ultimately placing Khan under years-long house arrest. Back in the 1990s, Iran's nuclear technology relied on technology originally acquired through Khan's network. Iran's centrifuges models, known as P1 and P2, were derived from blueprints stolen from European facilities. It also received ballistic missile technology and nuclear designs through Khan's networks. Lawler also warned that a nuclear-armed Iran could trigger a nuclear pandemic. It can spark regional arms races and greatly increase the risk of conflict. Who was Ayub Khan? In case you're wondering, he was a Pakistani scientist who joined his country's nuclear efforts after India's first nuclear test in 1974. He had previously worked at Europe's Urenco uranium enrichment facility, where he acquired highly sensitive centrifuge technology. And upon returning to Pakistan, Khan founded the Khan Research Laboratories, developing uranium enrichment capability and playing a key role in Pakistan's 1998 nuclear tests. In fact, in the mid-1980s, he established a secret network of front companies to sell nuclear aspirant countries, including Iran, North Korea, and Libya, eventually earning him the US label of Merchant of Death. And Khan later confessed his role on Pakistani television. In 2004, he was pardoned and placed under house arrest until 2009, and he died in 2021 at the age of 85. One of the most crucial breakthroughs came after the attacks of September 11. Lawler recalls the interception of the freighter, which was carrying hundreds of thousands of nuclear components headed for Libya. And when the US negotiators confronted the Libyan officials with the seized material, the reaction was silent, and Libya soon agreed to dismantle its entire nuclear program. And before we go on any further, here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. A huge diplomatic message for the United States from the G20 summit. We tell you about the messaging and why it matters. Does an antioxidant in apples have cancer-fighting potential? We tell you what a study says. All this and more coming up. The Indian Navy has taken a major step in strengthening its coastal defense. The Navy formally commissioned INS Mahe, the first vessel of the indigenous Mahe-class anti-submarine warfare shallow watercraft. The ceremony took place at the Naval Dockyard in Mumbai, and marking a major boost to India's security. Vice Admiral Krishna Swaminathan hosted the event, while the Army Chief presided over the commissioning. With this induction, the Navy expands its ability to track and neutralize underwater threats along India's littoral zones. INS Mahe brings a compact but highly sophisticated combat suite to the fleet. Engineers designed the ship specifically for anti-submarine missions in coastal and shallow waters. The vessel carries advanced sensors, cutting-edge communication systems, and precision strike capabilities that allow the crew to detect, follow, and eliminate hostile subsurface platforms. The ship can remain operational for extended periods in shallow waters and relies on modern machinery and automated control systems for high-efficiency maneuvers. Ship also features the Abhay sonar system, along with torpedo and rocket-based weapons, low acoustic signatures, fully networked systems tailored for coastal security operations.
First time the Abhay sonar which is indigenously designed and especially for the shallow water regions. So I'll talk about first the decoy launchers, which are fitted in the after section of the ship. These are the torpedo decoy launchers. Whenever the submarine, adversary submarine, will try to fire a torpedo onto us, we'll be launching automatically. The launchers will launch the weapon and it will deceive the enemy's torpedo. On the second side, we have the rubberized boat, which is used during the search and rescue and also during missions where the attacks on the other merchant vessels happen.
INS Mahi also stands out as a testament to Atmanirbhar Bharat. More than 80% of the ship's components come from Indian manufacturers. The ship carries the name of the coastal town along Kerala's Malabar coast. The cheetah serves as its mascot, symbolizing speed and also unblinking focus. And while the motto, Silent Hunters, reflects the vessel's stealth and constant readiness, Cochin Shipyard Limited built INS Mahi as the lead ship of an 8-vessel class. The next ship in the class, INS Malwan, is expected to join the fleet by March next year.
7 more ships of this class will follow, further bolstering the Navy's capabilities in the coastal defense as well as in the anti-submarine warfare. With video journalist Mangesh, this is Disha Shah for WION from Mumbai.
Delhi is once again grappling with a deadly winter smog crisis. The air in the capital reached dangerous levels. The air quality index, AQI, currently remains at 382 today, putting most areas in the very poor category. Some localities have already crossed the 400 mark, entering the severe zone. Visibility dipped across several parts, a thick layer of toxic haze hanging over the capital, making breathing an immediate health risk. In fact, neighboring parts are also struggling with the worsening air quality. Faridabad reported an AQI of 232, Gurugram 286, Ghaziabad 396, Greater Noida standing at 382, Noida 391. Environmental experts warn that PM 2.5 particles, the most harmful pollutants that are penetrating deep into the lungs, causing severe health risks, vehicular emissions, industrial pollution, construction dust, are the key reasons driving this crisis. Now, meteorologists say the spike is the result of calm winds, low temperatures, high moisture, which trap the pollutants close to the ground. The winter inversion effect, where the cold air gets trapped under a layer of warm air, is further locking the toxins in the air and preventing them from dispersing. Health authorities, meanwhile, urging the residents to limit outdoor activities, especially children, elderly citizens, asthma patients, and people with heart conditions. Prolonged exposure to these levels can lead to respiratory distress, eye irritation, and reduced lung function. The Indian rupee recovered from Friday's fresh record week level, boosted by market intervention by the Reserve Bank of India on Monday. Still, volatility expectations climbed to a multi-month high despite the pullback. On Friday, the rupee did not just weaken, but it collapsed in a 30-minute whirlwind trading that triggered stop losses and left traders stunned. The losses accelerated after policymakers surprised the traders by choosing not to prop it up late last week. The Indian currency fell nearly 1% to about 89.49 per dollar, with the move quickening after breaching the 89 mark. Many dealers and importers had assumed the RBI would protect the 88.80 level, as it had been doing for months, but the central bank's absence led to the panic trading on Friday. Referring to Friday's move, Dilip Parmar, a foreign exchange analyst at HDFC Securities, has said there was real panic in the market. People had been expecting that the RBI would protect the 89 level, but this time it was missing. And when asked over rupee devaluation, the RBI governor said that the currency decline is natural in terms of historical averages.
रुपए की जो डिवैल्यूएशन है जी, उसका जो मूल्य कम हो रहा है वो एक स्वाभाविक है। लगभग अगर हम ऐतिहासिक रूप से देखते हैं तो लगभग 3-3.5% से जो है अवमूल्यन एप्रिसिएशन वो हो रहा है। जी। हमारा प्रयास यही रहता है कि जो भी उतार चढ़ाव हो वो नियंत्रित हो, अत्यधिक नहीं हो, ताकि जो सभी लोग हैं वो अच्छी से अपनी प्लानिंग करके और अपना कार्य करें।
On Monday, the currency recovered to trade at just above 89 versus the dollar, up 0.3%. And traders said that the central bank intervened to support the rupee, helping the currency peel away from the historical low. Foreign portfolio outflows, lingering uncertainty over a US-India trade deal, and a pullback in the central bank's defense of the 88.80 level had sparked a slide in the currency. In 2025, crypto was supposed to be the rocket fuel powering Donald Trump's second term. A new financial frontier that would grow the Trump family's wealth in a way, energize his political base perhaps, and turn millions of traders into true believers of Trump. Instead, the crypto crash is now eroding that promise bit by bit for the Trumps and their followers alike. The Trump-branded meme coin has lost roughly a quarter of its value since August. Eric Trump's stake in a Bitcoin mining venture has fallen by nearly half from its peak. And shares of Trump's social media company, which began hoarding Bitcoin this year, are hovering near record lows. This sell-off is part of a larger wipeout. More than $1 trillion evaporated from the digital asset world. And according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, the Trump family's fortune has fallen from about $7.7 billion in early September to $6.7 billion today. According to Forbes, his net worth had declined $1.1 billion since September, and the drop is tied largely to the growing exposure to crypto. The decline coming as his technology company stock called Trump Media and Technology Group, which trades under the ticker DJT, dropped to $10.18 on Friday. But then here's the kicker. The Trumps have a built-in buffer in a way. So even when the prices crash, their crypto ventures are structured in a way that they can make money from fees and token sales, regardless of what actually happens at the markets and their prices. Take World Liberty Financial, for example. Trump and his 3 sons reportedly are listed as co-founders of WLF, which is a decentralized finance platform that debuted in September 2024. It has its own name brand token. The Trump family owns a store of the tokens that had a paper value of nearly $6 billion at the peak. In fact, today they are reportedly worth about $3.15 billion. But because those tokens are locked and weren't included in the family's valuation, the real financial impact is softened. And even as prices fell, the family secured major payouts from sales and corporate transactions. In August, World Liberty sold tokens to a small publicly traded company, netting $750 million in cash reportedly, and an equity stake. The Trumps walked away with about 70% of the proceeds reportedly. That's roughly $500 million. They earned about another $400 million from token sales before that deal. Trump Media also bought a large stash of the tokens, which have since lost around half their value. Another major bet. Finally, the Trump meme coin. The exact size of the Trump family's stake is not clear, but it has dropped about 25% in value since August. So who exactly is losing money then? It's the retail buyers. They are bearing heavy losses, particularly the Trump supporters who brought shares and Trump-linked tokens as a show of loyalty. They are now facing some of the harshest losses. For example, anyone who bought Trump's meme coin at its peak during Trump's inauguration weekend would be down almost their entire investment. What does all of this actually mean? It means that Trump may be losing money on paper, but his family set things up in a way where they still walked away with hundreds of millions in real payouts. The people who are actually taking the biggest financial hit right now are the retail buyers, many of them Trump supporters who bought in expecting to get rich alongside him. The G20 summit has marked a major diplomatic message to the United States. Despite a U.S. boycott that left Washington absent from the table, the remaining G20 countries pushed ahead with a unified message and adopted a declaration, even as Canada delivered one of the most significant warnings about the shifting balance of global power. South Africa, hosting the first G20 summit on the African continent, announced that every participating nation backed the 122-point declaration. The document calls for urgent global cooperation to help vulnerable countries manage climate-driven disasters, ease the crushing debt, transition towards cleaner energy, and develop their own mineral resources. South Africa framed the agreement as a critical step towards narrowing global inequality. Washington had reportedly urged South Africa to avoid adopting any joint declaration without American participation. But world leaders moved forward anyway, and among the most notable reactions came from Canada's Prime Minister, who pointed to a world undergoing dramatic economic realignment.
This year's G20 summit brought together nations representing 3/4 of the world's population, 2/3 of global GDP, and 3/4 of the world's trade. And that's without the United States formally attending. It's a reminder that the center of gravity in the global economy is shifting.
And when asked whether the American absence threatens global cooperation, Carney acknowledged that multilateralism faces serious challenges, especially as new trade partnerships accelerate to offset the impact of the Trump-era tariffs. And that shift is already visible. India is exploring renewed trade pacts with Canada and China. South Korea is coordinating with Taiwan on semiconductor production to temper supply chain disruptions, while China continues to expand its footprint across ASEAN economies and amid the rising tariff pressure from Washington. While the conclusion of the G20 and with the conclusion, Prime Minister Modi also wrapped up his 3-day visit to South Africa while taking part at the India-Brazil-South Africa summit in Johannesburg. Prime Minister Modi called for the immediate reforms in the UN Security Council. During a meeting with the Brazilian president and the South African president on the sidelines of the G20 summit, the Indian Prime Minister urged that the India-Brazil-South Africa troika should send a clear message for overhauling global governance structures. Prime Minister Modi also stressed that reforming the United Nations Security Council is no longer an option, but a necessity. Overall, the G20 has delivered a clear message. The world is moving forward with or without the United States. A new study from Shandong University has revealed how a common dietary antioxidant may help the body fight cancer and why gut microbes could be the crucial link. The antioxidant found in onions, apples, broccoli, grapes, tea has long shown promise in slowing tumor growth, but until now, the way it works inside the body hasn't been fully understood. In studies, researchers found basically that its power depends on healthy gut bacteria. Let's just break this down. The team discovered that when these microbes break it down, they produce a compound called DOPAC. It was this metabolite. It triggers strong anti-tumor effects. DOPAC works by enhancing the activity of the cells and these key immune cells that attack cancer. The compound appears to improve the health of their mitochondria through a process called mitophagy. It allows these cells to basically function more effectively against tumors. Notably, when DOPAC was given directly to mice, it reduced tumor growth, but even if their gut microbes had been wiped out, this suggests that it could be developed as a standalone therapy. The researchers also analyzed stool samples from patients with liver and colon cancer. They found that levels were significantly lower than in healthy individuals. And this hints at a possible connection between gut metabolism and weakened anti-tumor immunity. The study is suggesting that DOPAC could one day enhance current immunotherapies, such as immune checkpoint inhibitors. However, more research is required to determine its safety, ideal dosage, and how it should be delivered to the patients. As researchers continue to unlock the hidden connections between diet, gut health, and cancer immunity, this discovery marks an important step towards more precise and less invasive treatments, perhaps. For now, the findings offer a promising glimpse into how natural compounds and our own microbiome may one day work together to strengthen the body's defenses, which can even cure cancer. The moon wasn't born in the cold outskirts of space. It was forged in a brutal inner system brawl. A hidden world, once lost to time, smashed into Earth and rewrote cosmic history. And now scientists say they have finally traced the fingerprints of the culprit. Take a look.
The moon has always looked peaceful, silver, silent, serene, but its birth wasn't so easy. New analysis has revealed one of space science's biggest revelations, Theia, the long-lost planet that struck Earth. 4.5 billion years ago wasn't an outsider drifting in from deep space. It was born right next door, inside the fierce inner solar system.
One of the things about this research that does make it so exciting is not only is it helping to paint a picture of what happened to the Earth 4.5 billion years ago, but also it's able to almost exactly pinpoint where this object came from. We're talking about a planet that doesn't exist anymore. Theia hasn't existed in 4.5 billion years. It was completely vaporized, essentially. And yet, with a good amount of precision, we can figure out where it came from.
Scientists have re-examined lunar samples, studying oxygen isotopes with unprecedented precision. Earth and Theia share an almost perfect chemical signature. Too close, too precise, too unlikely to be coincidence. The moon, they say, wasn't shaped by a random cosmic hit. It was an inside job, a collision between two neighbors locked in the same early orbital chaos. But the new study goes further. It suggests Theia never escaped the inner solar system's furnace. It wasn't some rogue wanderer. It grew alongside Earth, competing for the same sunlight, the same orbital space, the same future. And when the moment came, destiny slammed them together. Theia died, the moon lived, Earth changed forever. And in that single collision, the conditions for life, tides, seasons, climate stability snapped into place. A cosmic accident? Not anymore. A cosmic conspiracy of creation.
Viru, Garam Dharam, Dharam Paji, just some of the many names fans fondly remember Dharmendra by. The cinema icon, the legend, passed away at the age of 89. Tributes are pouring in from around the world. While most things about Dharmendra are common knowledge for Indian cinephiles, there are several aspects even his most die-hard fans perhaps may not know about him. Having worked in over 300 films in his career spanning 6 decades, Dharmendra delivered several memorable films, of course, but did you know that he also held the record for an actor with the highest number of box office hits? At least 98 of his films fared well at the box office, meaning the films recovered their investments, and a record 74 have the distinction of being called hits. Over the years, Dharmendra worked with leading ladies across generations, but the female actor who appeared in the maximum number of films with him is his wife, Hema Malini. They have worked in a total of 45 films together, out of which 31 featured them as the leading romantic pair. Their notable hits, of course, including Sholay, Sita Aur Geeta, Jugnu, Dream Girl, among others. The actor also has the distinction of appearing in several films opposite actors who have also featured alongside his actor son, Sunny Deol. The list includes Sridevi, Jayaprada, Amrita Singh, among others. Dharmendra and Amitabh Bachchan's performance in Sholay immortalized Jay and Veeru. But did you know that there is another connection between the two? Several films that Dharmendra rejected ended up with Amitabh Bachchan, including Zanjeer, Dawn. Dharmendra is notably the only actor to have worked with almost all the senior members of the Kapoor family, including Raj Kapoor in Mera Naam Joker, Shashi Kapoor, Shami Kapoor. He also worked with Rishi Kapoor and Randhir Kapoor. He even worked with the ladies of the Kapoor family, including Neetu Kapoor and Babita. For those unaware, the Kapoors are regarded as the first family of Indian cinema, the first film family of Indian cinema. The legendary actor also shared a close association with singer Mohammad Rafi, who sang over 100 songs for Dharmendra. Some of them and some of the most memorable tracks, of course, are being hummed today and echoing across generations. While each of Dharmendra's iconic films have interesting stories attached to them, there's a particular one from Sholay. The actor was initially offered the roles of both Thakur Baldev Singh and the villain Gabbar Singh, but he chose to play Veeru. The reason was simple. He picked the light-hearted role as it also allowed him to be paired opposite Hema Malini's character. Dharmendra, a dedicated family man, was also the force behind the acting launch of his son, Sunny Deol. The first movie that his production house backed was Betab. That was Sunny Deol's debut film. And later, he produced Khayal in 1990 that also earned the cinema veteran a national award for best film, providing wholesome entertainment as a producer. But that wasn't his only contribution to the careers of his sons, of course. The cinema thespian also shared screen space with his two sons in movies like Dil Lagi and Yamla Pagla Deewana franchise, establishing the Deol family as a close-knit group of Bollywood. And the actor was also deeply rooted in tradition and shared a close connection with his agricultural roots. Even till his last breath, he identified as a farmer's son first, as an actor second. In his last years, the actor spent most of his time at his farmhouse in Lonavala, a legacy that lives on and a void that cannot be filled. Dharmendra's cinematic journey will continue to inspire generations. And on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gampir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Where darkness hides.